So welcome to the first recorded edition of the Rant Forum. I am your host, Luka Dziubyna. And I hope to take your questions in every week, answer them as best I could. I'm going to talk about things that are in the media that the media does not want to report on. Granted, I won't always have the best footage because obviously I don't have 50 reporters that are out reporting for me and selling their footage to me. But I will get to things that I think are important in our society and things that we need to talk about. One of the biggest things that has come up in recent times and politics is the Black Lives Matter movement. And I want to take a stance on this that I don't think you've heard anybody else take on this yet. It's not to me that Black Lives Matter, nor that white lives matter, nor that anybody's life matters in this country, in the United States of America. I am actually going to argue that the only time black lives have mattered in the United States of America was during slavery, when every slave was worth whatever they were worth on the slave market and had to do work for their white master or black master at a time. And the only other time that Black Lives Matter is when there are black athletes, black movie stars, singers, musicians, and people who perform. When they are on the black and white budget, and people are buying their CDs, people are going to their games, they're buying their jerseys, that has been the only time that Black Lives Matter. I'm not saying that there's not corrupt police officers who work in law enforcement, but it is actually also foolish to think that at least some of these people who were shot did not do something wrong to the officer in the first place to shoot them. Today, it just came out actually in the media, I believe $6.1 million were paid to the Baltimore family who had their son killed last year. Now, $6.1 million. A year and a half ago, actually, I spoke about this, and this was broadcast also in the Los Angeles area, on the fact that every police department should go through and buy a GoPro camera. Something they can wear on their head, something they can wear on their ties, depending on what uniform they're wearing, to actually sit and look at their interactions with citizens. You don't have to rely then on other people from the streets and their media and their footage going out there and saying this is what happened and relying on them. You actually have the police officer in direct contact with the person or the assailant or the person who was unrightfully executed, regardless of their color, on camera. Now, a few police departments actually took this up, and a few of them have done this. And the ones that did, crime went down by 40%. Because guess what? When you go up and you're talking to a police officer and there's a camera, the same way there's a camera right now in my face, you actually act a little bit differently. You do. You speak differently and you conduct yourself differently, knowing that everything that's on there is irrefutable evidence that could go into the court of law, that people could look at and say, you know what, this is not the police officer's report, that's different than the assailant's report, saying that the assailant did this and the police officer did that. There's none of that. Just to give you some facts and figures, personally I've known 10 police officers in my lifetime, many of which I worked with at Detroit Metro rather, airport, working airport security. And not one of them looked forward to ever pulling out their gun and shooting anybody. I remember being in 5th or 6th grade here in the United States, and a police officer coming to class, and one of the questions that I asked, of course everybody was scared to raise their hand, but being Mr. Loudmouth I had to, I asked, had you ever shot anybody? And the cop looked at me sincerely and said, no, he hadn't shot anybody, nor had he looked forward to shooting anybody, and he was actually happy he never had to pull out his gun, I think in the last 4 or 5 years. And this is an officer that if I remember correctly, was on the force for 20 to 25 years. So a few figures for you, and something that I think is important to annotate here. In 2013, actually, no, apologize. From the year 2010 to 2014, that's 4 years, 2,013 police officers were shot on duty in the United States. During that same time, 682 civilians lost their lives to police. This is beyond a 3-to-1 ratio. Now, you might sit there and say, well, of course, 3 times as many cops were shot, but how many of them died? Well, the actual statistics I don't have here at this moment. I don't trust necessarily everything I get from the internet, and don't look at this and say, well, I don't trust you because you haven't given me exact figures. Nobody's going to give you exact figures. Nobody is. the American war in Iraq is not going to give you exact figures on how many Americans have died there, nor are the Iraqis going to give you exact figures on how many Iraqis have died there during that occupation either. However, saying that, in just 1 year, veteran deaths, these are people that serve this country, black, white, Latino, Asian, whomever they were, wherever they came from and came to serve this country, they average 8,030 suicides per year. I'm not talking about people who went out there every day looking for the criminal. I'm not talking about somebody who could be a criminal, going out there and trying to stay away from police, or somebody who could be armed. I'm talking about people who served this country, served the freedoms that we still supposedly have, and 8,030 of them commit suicide every year. Now, this is not including the, in addition to, however many thousands a year that actually die waiting to receive VA benefits, VA coverage. And the Veterans Administration has done something very interesting on this. They've actually come out and they've said, they had an interview, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that, and a woman came out and said, and she was married to a guy for 12 years, that he waited so long for the Veterans Administration to say he was disabled, say he got injured during the war, and so on and so forth. He died. He died and he was dead for 8 years. And after 8 years, the VA came and awarded that family a sum of money. And their response to that was, we are so proficient, we care so much that we've come 8.5 years after this person's death to actually award that person money. Here's the truth of it and what you won't hear from any other news source. And I ask you to ask yourself this. What the fuck good does $8,000 do for you when you're dead? What has it done for anybody? What has that done for anyone? 8 years to receive $8,000 in benefits, for the VA to come back and say that we are so proficient that we took care of this person's claim. Recently, I went to one of the representatives for the VA because my claim myself has been going on for 6 years now, since being honorably discharged out of the military in 2010. I had served 6.5 years. And when I spoke with people that were VA representatives, one of the gentlemen there told me, and he worked just on the office from the VA, actually a floor above. He was on the 13th floor and they're on the 14th, or the VA is on the 13th and he was on the 12th, at the VA in Oakland, by the way. And they sat and they said, he had a gentleman that had escaped from the Philippines in a death camp. A death camp that, as well as I know history, and as well as I've read up, I had never heard of. He escaped after being held there for 8 months. And he was on his deathbed. This gentleman who was representing me at this veterans organization, I think it was the DVA, Department of Veterans Affairs, told me that he was still waiting on benefits that both he and his family probably would not receive. He went to visit him on his deathbed. Why? Because this person didn't have a piece of paper saying that he had escaped successfully from this death camp. Now, you find me one Jew. You find me one Pole. You find me one German. You find me one faggot. You find me one gay. You find me someone. You find me a gypsy, a Russian, anybody who has a piece of paperwork from the commander at Auschwitz saying that they escaped successfully when they were supposed to be exterminated there. You find me that. Because guess what? From my knowledge, the 3 commanders that ran Auschwitz didn't give pieces of paperwork out to people who had escaped successfully. Matter of fact, they wouldn't just go in there. They would decimate the whole village and whoever was around and whoever may have or may not have helped you. Now, going back to Black Lives Matter and how lives actually don't matter. Floyd Mayweather, whom I've met in the past few months, holds an open gym each year where underprivileged students can get free school supplies even though he himself is a high school dropout. This is Floyd Mayweather. This is somebody who actually does not have any corporate sponsorship, isn't on Gatorade, isn't on Pepsi Cola, isn't on anything else. He's made 10 times more than Michael Jordan did playing professional basketball in the years and the championships that he has. However, since that time, Michael Jordan, actually, who has Hanes, who has Nike, Jordans, the shoes, has made 4 times more than Floyd Mayweather has. He's worth over $1.3 billion, invested in golf courses, invested in other things. So Floyd Mayweather, the high school dropout, the person that actually did not finish high school, who actually cannot read that well and has been on TV actually showing that and on the radio showing that, gives out school supplies to underprivileged kids, be they white, black, or Latino, or Asian, or whatever they are, in the United States in his gym once a year. And this is before school. And has 3 kids of his own, by the way. And now you have somebody like Michael Jordan, who recently invested $2 million in a prison where his shoes are made. And here brings up another point. When we talk about immigration in this country, when we talk about, oh, we're going to close down the borders and this and that. First of all, let me say this. I myself am an immigrant to this country. Now, it wasn't my choice. I was fairly young when this decision was made. And if you don't believe that, give a credit card to an 8-year-old and see how well that works. And cover the bills for that, if you do. If in this country, just the Mexican immigrants, and even illegal immigrants, I'll say on top of that, left this country, what you will see is absolute chaos. Within 2 weeks, the things that you buy at the store, your Walmarts, your Meijers, your Albertsons, would go up at least 200 to 300% for one. This country would go bankrupt within probably 4 to 5 months. That is my estimate. Because prison in America is as rehabilitative to prisoners as the Ayatollah would make a good host to the Vatican. But before we judge who's at fault here, actually all of us are. We have all made the mistake, and we will continue to make the mistake of going to dollar stores. We will pick up Chinese hammers that have been made for $1. We'll pick up toys that have been made cheaply, and afterwards when some kid chews on it, and essentially in China they have lead in the paint, and they end up dying of liver failure or whatever else they die of, because the situations have happened in the United States. That'll be fine. We'll still keep going there. We'll still keep buying cheap supplies. And the other ones, the more righteous of us, will actually go to the dollar stores and say, oh, we don't buy the knives, we don't buy the hammers, we don't buy those things. We don't want to ruin American business, but we'll buy the cleaning supplies, we'll buy the little scents that you put in your house, we'll buy other things. We are each our own greedy, individualistic capitalist. And we will save in every single area that we possibly can. And with every hammer, with every pair of shoes, or a nice t-shirt, we've given away a piece of our American industry. We've done that, and knowing even where we stand today, we would gladly do it again. You see, it's a beautiful system that's designed to keep you in whichever caste system you were born into. There are very few people that come from the ghetto, come from the barrios, and work their way up and become doctors, become lawyers, become other positions in life that actually you would sit back and look and respect. Very few. The few that have are exceptions to the rule. They're not regular to the rule, they are exceptions to it. And there are also very few kids that are probably born in Bel Air that end up on the streets or end up in a barrio. Can you imagine a limo picking somebody up in Houston, Texas, and taking them to some ghetto that's in Houston because the dad from Bel Air or Upper Los Angeles wanted to go visit their kid and wanted to go to Section 8 housing? It doesn't happen. And if you've seen it happen, send a photo. I'll actually post it on this program so you can look at it. Yet you, the lower middle class, will have marketed to you everything from how you should dress to what sort of body type is desirable. And for the most part, you will eat that shit up and you will read People magazine. What you will go do, every single one of you that is watching this program now, and the majority of you, is you will pick up mindless entertainment. You will pick it up at every place that you possibly can. Now, I'm not coming out here and I'm not saying that any life is worth more than anyone else's. And here's the interesting part of that. For the last 5 years, I've gone around and my friends, people that I've seen in Spain, people I've seen in Poland, people I've seen in San Francisco, New York, Florida, South Korea, wherever I've been, people I've asked oftentimes, what is a life worth? How many American lives is worth one Iraqi life? All right? How many Iraqis is worth a Filipino life? How many Filipinos are worth somebody who was in Rwanda or Ghana or Kenya? And every single one of them have told me a life is a life. And I don't sit there and I don't question them. I don't say who's Republican, who's Democrat, who's, progressive, who's a communist, who's a socialist. I don't care about that. I don't even know what category I fit into. I'm sure people that are going to post on here will tell me exactly what category I may go into. And that's fine. But without exception, every single one of them has said a life is worth a life. And so a life in America is worth as much as a life in Iraq. Well, here's the truth of things. Out of the 15,000 or over 15,000 American service people that have died in Iraq, the same people that if they came back would not get benefits from the VA and would be fighting till today, the same people that you actually make a dirty face on when you're driving by your car and you stop under a bridge and there's a veteran that's there that's fought for this country and who was homeless, those same people, 15,000 of them, out of those 15,000, 7,500, roughly half, have died because of friendly fire, helicopters going down, them tipping over somewhere, other malfunctions that may have happened. Some of them have also committed suicide, although you will never know that. But when the ratio is 15,000 Americans to over 150,000 Iraqis, and absolutely nobody talks about that, that's a problem. That's a problem that absolutely nobody wants to talk about. That's a problem that you're not going to hear on MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, any of those stations. They're not going to give you the numbers. And those are the people that every day are fighting so their kids can get on a school bus and they can go to school and they can get an education. And every day that they send their daughter or their son out on that school bus, they don't know if they're going to come back whole. Guess what? I knew plenty of people, they were deployed for 3 to 6 months, they came back and they weren't whole. And they were only shot at for 1 or 2 or 3 times during that 3 to 6 month deployment. And yet, we expect these people to act accordingly with whatever philosophy we've pre-established for them to act upon. And yet, we don't understand their lives. We don't. This is the first of our broadcasts. I will, in the future, answer as many questions and hopefully hit as many topics as possible. In the future, I hope to actually receive live telephone calls, but I will take email. I'll take Facebook messages. I will reply to things both positive and negative. I'm not correct. I'm not any more right than anybody else is out there, but I'm telling you things that you won't hear in other places. And so until our next broadcast, I wish you the best and thank you for watching.